All right, so in chapter 2, we're actually going to start making some stuff. Unlike chapter 1, where we sort of just went over, getting things installed, where the resources are, what you're sort of expected to know. In chapter 2, we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. The first thing we're going to do isn't actually writing Go code. We're going to just initialize our directory, set up Git, and the Git stuff isn't something you have to do. I just like to do it in these videos because for a lot of you, you won't really have much familiarity with Git or like what a good workflow is for that sort of thing. So I just want to give you an idea of what I do and how you might use it yourself to sort of follow along, but it's not something you need to do at all. So we're going to start out by cding to our Go path. So that's just ~go for me. And then I'm going to go into the source directory. And then in here, you can see I have a bunch of folders. I'm going to make the directory lenslock.com. So depending on what guide you're following or what other stuff you've seen, a lot of people will do their code in, for example, github.com/your username and then put stuff there. So this is really useful whenever you want to let people go get your stuff. So you want to be able to say like go get /something, or something is some package that I created. But I'm not doing that here for our application because for our web application, generally speaking, you don't want people to go get it. It's something where they'll clone the Git repo or something like that, and then they'll build it locally, but you don't really need go get to work. So I tend to use just the domain name as the directory that I put all the source code in. You can make your own decision as to what makes the most sense for you, but for this book, I'm going to be doing just lenslock.com as the directory. So once we're in here, we're going to initialize Git. So I'm going to type Git init. I have Git installed. If you'd like to follow along and use Git, you'll need to find a guide and install that. It's not too hard, and if you have any trouble, you can always just reach out. So this initializes my repository. Because I have a couple things set up in iTerm and everything, I have a ZSH installed and some other themes for it. So like I see what branch I'm in. I'm in the master branch. And then this part is green because that signifies that there's no changes. So if I cut git status, there's nothing to commit right now. You'll also see this throughout the rest of these screencasts. I sometimes type git st. That is I have an alias for status, and then I have co for checkout. So checkout is what that normally is, and then I have b for branch. So those two do the same thing. There's no branches right now, so it's not really going to do much, but you can see that that's what it is. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a README. So we're going to atom readme.markdown. So Atom is my editor. If you don't have Atom installed, you might not, you might want to use something else, but I've got this README file. I'm going to save it. So it's inside my lenslock directory. And we're going to say lenslocked. We're going to say an awesome photo gallery application written in Go. And we'll just save that. So we have a README here. Now that it's set up, you can actually type git status, and you can see that it's an untracked file that's here. So the next thing we want to do is get a git ignore file. So I'm just going to copy one over. I don't see much point in sort of teaching you about this right now. Showing you like the best way to come up with a git ignore file, because most people just copy one that somebody else has and then they tweak it to meet their needs. So I'm going to, so the lenslock.com/.public is it's the Git repository I have that just has all of the source code that I've sort of been sharing with everybody, as they develop and read the book. I'll probably eventually just use the directory we're in now, but I'm going to go ahead and just, have that there. So I'm going to copy the .git ignore file from there. I need to copy it here, so put the dot so it copies it here. So you can see here I've got the git ignore file. So if I do git status, I've got the git ignore file. So if I open it, you can see here that it's basically saying all these are different types of files that I want Git to ignore and not to commit to source control. So this is nice where let me find this Sublime Workspace, for example. A Sublime Workspace is a file that is generally used to sort of define some personal preferences you have with Sublime Text. It's not something that you really want to commit and like give to all your other developers because they might have their own preferences. So it's nice to have something like that that's not committed to Git, so everybody can have their own version of it, and it doesn't get pushed back and forth to each developer's computer with different changes they didn't want. So the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to create just a quick Go file to sort of test this out and make sure everything's working right. So we're going to make package main, func main. We're going to use the format package or the fumpt package. I'm going to warn you now, I tend to call this the format package because I hate the name fumpt. I just don't like the pronunciation, but technically it is fumpt, I believe. So we're going to do print line, hello world, and we'll save that. So we'll quickly go ahead and make sure this runs. All right, so that's running. You can see the output right here. The next thing we're going to do is make sure it builds. You don't technically have to do this, but I just want you to see that whenever you do build it, we've got this main. That's because I said go build main.go. If you go build, you can see that it named the file lenslock.com, which was just the directory that we're currently in. So I can do run this. I can even do the main one that we built earlier. So I'm going to remove both of these because I don't want to commit those. So now we have these three files in our git status. We have the readme, the gitignore, and the main.go. So now that we have those three, I'm going to go ahead and git add. So adding them is how we tell Git that in this, we're making a commit, which is a collection of source changes that you want to like save as one solid unit. And you can use them for, code reviews and things like that. You can let other developers look at them and see what you are changing. So usually when you do a commit, you're going to sort of decide which files like make sense together, and then you want them to be together. So for example, I might do git ignore and then commit it. And this is the only file that's being committed right now is the git ignore file. The other ones won't be committed. And I'm going to say a git ignore file. So the commit is how you commit that, and the -m lets me put a message with it. So I'm going to say you created the git ignore file. Then I can do git status, and that shows that there's only these two files that are untracked now. If I go git log, you'll see that here's this commit that we just did, and it has the message that I left, and it's it says it's by me. But it only had that one file that we just created, the gitignore file. So now we could do git add. So -a is what you'll see me use a lot. -a means every file that's untracked right now. So if we get status, you can see that these two are both ready to be committed. So we can git commit -m, created a readme and a test, or a sample main.go. So we've committed that, and now those two are created. You can see that this is turned green again, meaning that we have no more files left to be changed. And if we type git status, you can see that we're on branch master and there's nothing to commit. So we've got everything committed here. The last thing we're going to do in this this video is we're going to go ahead and create a repository on gitlab.com. So we're going to go to GitLab, and we're going to create a project. And I already have lenslocked, so I'm going to go ahead and do lenslock.com .screencasts, I guess. Or let me make this screencast.lenslock.com. So I'm just doing this because I already have the lenslock.com project. You could do whatever you want for your project name. So I'm not going to change anything here. I'm just going to make it private, create it. And then we have the project. So if you don't have some of these things set up with Git, you probably should have technically set some of these up before you even made some commits. But these are things that set your global username, your global email address that'll be used for every commit message that you do. They're nice so that whenever you push changes to someplace like GitLab, it'll know which developer was making the changes. So we don't need anything here because we already have the repository. We have an existing folder. So when you run this line, it's saying that you want to add a folder. We've already initialized it with Git. What we haven't done is we haven't added this, this right here. So what this line is doing, So when you run this line, what you're essentially saying is that you want to add a remote repository to your Git, and that's why you're typing git remote add. The next thing after you do the git remote add is you type an origin, which is the name of the the repository that you're adding, and then the last part is the address to that repository. So once we've done that, you can actually see that when you go git remote, it'll show you origin as one of them. Let me see if there's a yes. So dash help will always give you like the help, and to exit that help you hit Q. If you put -v, you can see we have the verbose version. So this shows the actual address for it and the name. So what we want to do now is we want to push our code. So we've already added and committed. So now we want to push our code to origin. So whenever you do that, you type git push. You don't need the -u. We're going to do two origins where we're pushing, and you put the branch that you want to push. So we're in the master branch, and we're going to push that first. So this went decent speed. Usually my internet's been pretty slow lately, so it goes slower, but you can see that push. So we can go back here, refresh. And because we had a README file, that's what's being shown here. This README is automatically just rendered as, like the default part, and that's how Markdown gets rendered. And then if you go to the files, you can see that we've got the three files that we changed. We go to our commits, and you can see there's two different commits because we created the two. And on each one, you can actually look and see what files were changed. So this one was the readme in the main.go, and this one was just the git ignore. So that's one of the upsides to sort of breaking your stuff up, is you can also go back through and see specific commits, and you can roll some of them back if you need to. So that's everything. We have our repository, our Git repository set up. We have our folder to work in. Moving forward, we're going to build a basic web application, and then sort of build from that the rest of the book. And we'll be using this Git repository to save our code along the way.